Hi, I'm Allie from the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you today how to do a diagonal pattern, or I'll also explain how to do a straight pattern using the Czech tile beads. The Czech tile beads are similar to the Tile bead, but they are a little bit thicker. They do have 2 holes in them that we're going to be working with, and I'm working with them in some great metallic colors. I have Jet Labrador, I have Jet Bronze, and I have Jet. And then I also am going to be using some 11 seed beads, and the 11 seed beads that I have here are in the dark metallic bronze. With these beads, I'm going to be using some wildfire beading thread, and I'm going to be using green thread in the 0.006. In addition to that, I have 2 beading needles. I have a thread zap 2 to help cut my thread. I have a needle nose pliers, bent needle nose, to help me flatten out my thread in order to thread my needles. And I have a wire cutter just in case you need to cut your thread down a little bit. A nice pair of sharp wire cutters will do it. I'm also working on a bead mat here. And to clasp my bracelet, I'm going to be using one of our cup buttons in the Crystal Labrador color. So I've got my beads all laid out here, and what I'm going to do is I'm putting on a stop bead. This bead will go to the bottom of my thread, and I've threaded one of my needles, and I have the other one here just as reserve because it can get bent up between the tile beads. So I have the one needle on, and I have about 5 feet of thread. I'm going to add one bead as a stop bead. I'm going to go back in the project and add the cup bead. So for now, what I'm going to do is leave myself about 10 inches of thread at the base. Run my needle back through that bead going from the tail end, that 10 inches, towards my long piece. And I'm going to do that 2 times. That's going to stop my beads from falling off the end. This pattern in the diagonal form is going to be a square stitch pattern. You can do the same thing in a peyote stitch, but it's going to be square stitch for what we're working on here. To get started with my square stitch, I'm going to pick up one color of each bead on my needle. So I'm going 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to have the jet bead, the bronze bead, and then the silver bead as well. So once these are on, we're going to decorate the ends with a picot trim, which is 3 seed beads. And I'm going to take my needle and go the whole way down the right side bead. Once that needle comes out the bottom here, you're going to give a nice tight pull, and we're going to get ready for our diagonal stitch. We're going to be putting a silver bead first, but to do what we're going to do and decorate the end here in mimicking the seed beads on the other side, we're going to add 3 seed beads to be our picot trim on this side. We do 3 seed beads, and then we're going to pick up our silver. For a square stitch, our needle is going to go back into the bead that we're coming out of, so that black bead there that we're coming out of, it's also going to go into it in a circular fashion. And we're going to give a nice tight pull. What that's going to do is put that square tile right next to. In order so I don't see a lot of extra thread, I'm going to sew back through those 11 seed beads. And at the same time, I'm going to sew up through that last bead that I added. So square stitch is just a big collection of circles over and over again. Next in line on the diagonal, if you follow your mark, is you're going to use a black bead. The black bead gets put on down through the bronze. Give a nice tight pull. Get that right in there, and then again through the black bead. So again, completing my circle, and give a nice pull. After that, I get my bronze bead on, go down through my silver, give a nice pull. Again, we're always going to be doing a bead of each color per row, and we're just going to be changing the order. Once I come out the top here of my bronze bead and give a nice tight pull, that's going to link those 2 rows together. On go 3 of my 11 seed beads to form that picot trim, and I'm going to go down that whole second row of beads. Pull tight, and I get my little picot trim on that side. When you're looking, the picot is always going to come opposite of what you're looking. Again, I know the first bead that I'm going to put on is the last bead that I put on. So I'm going to put on my bronze bead, but before that I get my 3 11 on, and then I pick up my bronze. So back the top of the silver of the tile before and the tile that you're coming out of, back through those 11 seed beads, and back through that bronze bead. Again, give a nice tight pull, and that's going to get rid of that extra thread. Here, when you start to draw your diagonal line, we're going to add the silver back down through the black. And you can do this however many rows wide you want. Like I said, you could also do this pattern in lines rather than diagonals and straight lines. And you could just do a row of silver, a row of black, and you can change up the pattern based on that. You can also do a checkerboard pattern. So the options are endless. The nice thing about the square stitch versus peyote stitch is the beads sit right next to one another. In my square stitch pattern, I know that the next bead that I need to put on is going to be my black bead. And this will actually complete my whole first row of my diagonal here, because I've got 3 by 3 wide. So when you look diagonal wise, I'm going to have my longest diagonal, which is going to be my black one, finished. Once I'm coming out of the top there, on go 3 more of my brass beads down the whole other side of my beads. I'm going to get ready then to continue on with my diagonal pattern, and the next diagonal bead that I'm going to be adding is going to be my black bead, because that's the last bead that I put on. Again, before I add that black bead, I'm going to go ahead and add my 11-0 seed beads and then my black bead in place and get ready to finish that square stitch, continuing on with my pattern, going that diagonal direction. So just showing as I'm getting a little bit further, I have my diagonal pattern started, and I have the lines going along with my bronze and my black and my silver, and I'm going to keep continuing to build and go. If you look at the 11-ohs, they're always going to be opposite. One is going to be going on the bridge thread between the beads, and the other one is going to be going on the bridge thread going from one hole to the other hole of the same color of bead. Again, the first bead in my rotation is always going to be the bead that I last left off with, and it's always going to be the same order of beads. So you can sit them out in a pile based on that order. I'm always going to have the silver, then the bronze, then the black. Silver, bronze, black. It just depends on what color you're starting out with. That's going to determine which bead goes first in that order. And again, the easy way to tell is whatever bead you last left off with is the first bead that you're going to add here at the end. And like I said, you can do this multiple wide. If you're looking to do it wider, you can do it narrower. You can do a zigzag pattern. That's kind of up to you. But the more beads you work with, the more intense you can make your pattern. You can skip beads. You can make checkerboard. Another idea is to actually do this on the loom. I would suggest the Rick's beading loom, and that would be an easy way to do this pattern as well. In addition to doing this pattern and the square stitch with the tiles, you can also do it with tilas, or you could do it with cubes as well, if you like that block look that I'm getting with doing that nice flat bead. When you put this on with the tiles, it lays really nicely, and it's going to feel really nice on your wrist because they are completely flat. So it's going to give a nice little lay right on your wrist as you're working with it. And I'm going to continue adding, just building on to my diagonal pattern here. Once you have your desired length, what you're going to want to do is get ready to put on your ends. A nice thing when you're ending is to use the opposite corner if you can. So I started with a silver in that top corner, and I ended with a silver in the bottom quarter. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get ready to attach my button on one end and a loop on the other. I did leave extra thread here at the end, or at the beginning, to do that, and I have thread here on the end attached to my needle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle and thread, and I'm going to add my cup button to this end. To do so, I'm going to basically go back into my project, and I'm going to come out between the 2 holes here on the side, coming out my black bead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some of my 11-ohs, and this is going to decorate this end of my bracelet here. I'm going to pick up 2 11-ohs, and I'm going to go back through my clasp here the whole way till I get, so I'm coming out, or back through my tiles here, so I'm coming out the middle, or the first hole of that tile. I'm going to take my thread then, and I'm going to come down the second hole, And what that's going to do is allow me a place to come out right at the end here to attach my cup button. Onto my cup button, or onto my tile and thread, I'm going to add about 5 11-0 beads. I'm going to go through the back end of my cup button and come out the front. When I come out the front, I'm going to add 3 of my 11-0s, and I'm going to go down the other side of my cup button. Pull nice and tight, and that's going to get me those beads in place there. I'm going to add 5 more, just like I did at the start. You can do as little as 3. I'm going to make mine have a little bit more length. I'm going to do 5, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that same hole that I was coming out of, going through that same tile. I'm bringing my thread and my needle down. I'm pulling it through just that last piece there, and that's going to pick up that cup button. I'm going to reinforce and go back through the whole thing. Whenever you're doing clasps, you want to make sure to reinforce them and go back through and thread back through. I'm threading back through the cup button and through all the beads there too as well. You can do this 2 to 3 times. That's up to you. Once I'm done reinforcing, I'm going to take my needle and thread out the side of one of my tiles here. And I'm just going to go to the end, and I'm going to tie off just with some sewer's knots, creating little knots here by going underneath some of the bridge threads and taking my needle through the loop that I've made, and that's going to make some of those little knots here on the end. I'm going to knot this in a couple different places. I don't want my thread to show, so that knot you want to make sure to get in between your beads. Pull nice and tight, and then I'm going to turn around and do the other side, similar to this side, but with a loop coming out that center tile bead. So again, I'm just going to do those little knots then on the side, maybe dab a little bit of glue, and I'm just going to cut off that thread there, and we're going to get ready to add our loop on the opposite side. So I'm back to the starting end here, and I've taken off that stop bead. Just like I did on the other side, I'm going to add 2 11-0 seed beads. I'm going to go back through my tile, coming out the bottom row of the middle tile. I'm going to flip my needle and thread and go back the opposite way, so I'm coming out the top hole of the middle tile. When I'm coming out the top hole of the middle tile here, I'm going to add 3 11-0s, followed by a 4th 11-0, and then I'm going to add 24 seed beads. 24 is kind of the magic number around the cup button, so if you're using cup buttons as your closure a lot, like I do, 24 is that magic number. So I'm going to put all of these beads and let them drop down on my thread and needle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up that 4th bead in line, and I'm going to go through just that 4th bead, so the 4th bead that I put on. After that, I'm going to add 3 more of my 11-0 bead, and that's going to create a little Y or a little V as I go into my last tile again through that same hole. So it's just going to create that nice little loop there. I'm going to reinforce the loop, going through the whole thing. And after I go through the whole thing, I'm just going to tie those side little knots like I did with the first side. Once I've done the little side knots, again, I can trim those down, my ends here, burn them off as well with my thread burner. That's going to get a nice end to it. If you want, you can use a little glue as well. And you really come out with a nice flat-lying tile bracelet. Again, you can do this with tilas. You can switch up the 8-0 or the 11-0s to drops. You can use no 11-0s at all. So it's kind of up to you. And then with that cup button, it just adds that nice color match to the different Czech products that we're working with here, because the tiles do come out of the Czech Republic, whereas the tilas are from Miyuki from Japan. And you're left with this really, really just great, it feels really nice to wear, and you can make it as many rows as you want and as many thick or as many wide as you want as well. So enjoy playing around with these new tiles that we're getting in these lovely metallic colors. Have fun, make a striped pattern. You can change it up however you like and really get a great look to these different tiles. You can also use beads that have coating on one side and not on the other side and make completely different tiled pattern as well. Thanks a lot for watching. If you do get a chance, check out our website, PotomacBeads.com. We'd love to see you in one of our locations. You can check out the locations there on the page. And then also, if you don't have a location near you, you can always shop online and shop with us, and we'd be happy to ship out some products to you as well. So thanks a lot for watching, and have fun playing with all these great metallics and new Czech products, including the tile beads.